I'm not coming back. I've met someone better and already moved your things to storage. My name is Ethan Caldwell, 52 years old, and I'm standing alone in the kitchen of our Seattle townhouse, staring at my phone at 11:17 p.m. on a Friday. My wife, Marissa, was supposed to be on the fourth day of a wellness retreat in Sedona. The text came with a screenshot of a bank transfer. $124,000 pulled from our joint account straight into hers. I put the phone down and took another sip of cold coffee. 20 years together. 2 adult sons, and it ended with 2 sentences and a screenshot. If stories like this make you reflect, please support the channel, subscribe, hit like, and share with someone who needs to hear it. There had been signs, new clothes she never wore around me, weekend trips that grew longer, phone calls that paused when I walked into a room. I noticed everything. I'm a forensic consultant. I deal in details for a living. But when it came to my own life, I looked away. Maybe that was my first mistake. Or maybe it was trusting someone who always said, "I don't need to understand your work, as long as you keep the lights on." I opened my laptop and logged into an email account Marissa didn't know existed. 3 alerts from my financial security suite. Someone had attempted to change access credentials to 3 accounts she had no business knowing about. She was thorough. I had to respect that. I stared at her message once more. Then I typed 2 words back. Good luck. I stood there for a long time after sending that message. The silence in the townhouse felt unfamiliar, almost staged, like I had stepped into someone else's life and forgotten the lines. The refrigerator hummed. A draft slipped in through the kitchen window Marissa always said needed fixing. I never fixed it. It wasn't just the text that stung. It was everything leading up to it. The shift in tone. The smiles that never quite reached her eyes. The polite distance disguised as wellness. She'd stopped asking how my day was. Stopped looking up when I walked through the door. Somewhere along the way, we became business partners who shared a mortgage and a calendar. Looking back, I saw it all clearly. The new wardrobe, the week-long retreats, the social media posts tagged in places I'd never been invited to. She started introducing herself as a wellness entrepreneur. Like my name no longer belonged in her story. Maybe it didn't. But I said nothing. I chalked it up to stress, change, the way marriages evolve after 2 decades. I told myself not to be dramatic, that everyone grows apart now and then. I even bought her flowers last month. She left them in the kitchen, unopened. I'm not a naive man. I analyze patterns for corporations facing financial threats. I see fraud before it spreads. But love is messy. Love is full of blind spots you learn to ignore until the damage is done. And now it was done. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table, the cold light of my laptop illuminating the face of a man I barely recognized. Tired, betrayed, but calm. Years ago, during a complex case involving offshore embezzlement, my younger brother Noah, a cybersecurity architect, and I had developed a personal fallback protocol, just in case. I picked up the phone and dialed. "It's time," I said when he answered. There was silence. Then, "She finally made her move?" "Yes, and she took a big swing." Noah didn't need more details. He'd been quietly skeptical of Marissa for years, never voiced it outright, just a sideways glance here and there. The kind that you only understand in hindsight. After we hung up, I opened my encrypted vault. Inside was everything I'd built in parallel to our joint life. 2 LLCs, 1 domestic, 1 international. A diverse portfolio in crypto. multiple trusts, and a financial management system I'd written myself, something I never showed Marissa because she never asked. "As long as the bills are paid," she used to say. By sunrise, I had frozen all joint accounts, flagged the $124,000 transfer as suspicious, and scheduled a call with my attorney. It wasn't revenge, it was preparation. And underneath the mechanics, the keystrokes, the verification codes, was something colder: acceptance. She was already gone. Now it was my turn to disappear too, but on my own terms. I met Marissa Holloway at a non-profit fundraiser in Bellevue. I was 35, newly divorced from a quiet, short-lived marriage, and entirely immersed in my forensic consulting firm. She was 31, radiant, with that kind of warm confidence that fills a room without trying. She smiled at my awkward attempt to explain financial analytics and said, "I don't need the details. Just tell me you love what you do." That should have been a red flag. We were married within a year. I thought I'd found balance. She brought color and spontaneity to a life that had always been grayscale and predictable. I funded her wellness studio from my savings, proud to support her dream. When she wanted to lease a larger space, I made it happen. When she asked for a second home in Oregon, I said yes. Not once did I question the cost, not in dollars, not in energy, not in myself. I remembered something my dad said while we replaced the deck at his cabin in Idaho. He paused mid-hammer, looked at me, and said, "Son, just make sure she respects how hard you work for everything you give." I laughed it off then. It stayed with me. Around our 6th anniversary, I began shifting assets, quietly, methodically. I created backup trusts, opened accounts she didn't know about, not to hide, but to protect. Even love, I'd learned, needed boundaries. She called it security. I called it erosion. And somewhere between the yoga retreats, the brand partnerships, and the influencers she called friends, I stopped being her partner. I became her sponsor. And I let it happen. The morning after her message, I followed routine out of muscle memory. Grinding coffee beans, letting the kettle hiss, pouring into the same ceramic mug I'd used for years. My hands moved as if nothing had changed, but everything had. I booted up my custom-built financial interface, something I designed originally for clients, but long ago modified to manage my own increasingly complex world. Within minutes, I activated the full protection protocol Noah and I had created during a winter storm years ago. We joked then about digital doomsday plans. Now it didn't feel funny. I froze every joint account and suspended our shared credit cards. Then I flagged the $124,000 transfer through my direct banking channel. Years of professional relationships paid off. Within the hour, the transaction was under fraud review. Paperwork went out to my attorney with evidence of financial misconduct and instructions to begin divorce proceedings immediately. There was no panic in me, only clarity. Then I made the hardest call. My mother picked up on the second ring. Her voice still carried that quiet steadiness that used to lull me to sleep during storms. "Marissa left," I said. "She took the money, had my things moved out while pretending to be on retreat." Silence on the line. "I'm sorry, Ethan," she finally said, "but I can't say I'm surprised. What are you going to do now?" I stared at the half-empty coffee mug in front of me. "What I've prepared for," I said. "What I should have done a long time ago. Protect what's mine." And for the first time in years, I meant more than just money. Her name lit up my screen at 9:04 a.m. I didn't answer. By noon, she had called 10 times, sent 5 texts. The last one read, "What the hell did you do? My cards aren't working. The money's gone." I didn't reply. Instead, I drove across the city to the storage facility she mentioned in her message. The code she included worked. I stepped inside a dim, cold unit and found 2 plastic bins, my clothes neatly folded, my old laptop wrapped in a towel. That was it. No books, no framed photos from our cabin trips, no college baseball from my sons, nothing from my father. His watch, gone. The box of handwritten letters he gave me before he passed, gone. She hadn't just taken her freedom. She'd tried to erase me. I stood there for a long while, surrounded by concrete walls and fluorescent silence. Then something in me hardened. A quiet shift, sharp and irreversible. This wasn't just betrayal. It was disregard. 15 years, and I wasn't worth more than 2 bins and a password-protected goodbye. I loaded the boxes into the back of my truck and drove to a nearby coffee shop. I sat in the corner, opened my laptop, and logged into one of my secured databases. Then I typed a name, Jared Stone, the man Marissa had tagged in posts over the last several months. The man with 6-pack abs, sun-drenched captions, and 1,000 fire emojis. The one she called inspiring. He wasn't a mystery. He was a trail. And now, I was done ignoring it. The coffee turned cold beside me as I scrolled through data no average person could access. Being a licensed forensic consultant had its advantages, especially when the target left breadcrumbs in every public-facing platform imaginable. Jared Stone, 36, self-proclaimed wellness coach, owner of a boutique gym called Stone Core Wellness in Capitol Hill. Polished branding, motivational reels, designer supplements with questionable claims. But beneath the curated surface, debt. 3 maxed-out business credit cards. A ballooning lease he was behind on. 2 equipment loans, one of which Marissa had co-signed just 8 weeks ago. Back when I was still scheduling anniversary reservations and pretending we were just in a rough patch. She wasn't inspired. She was invested. Literally. Digging deeper, I found discrepancies in his business filings, mismatched addresses, inconsistent income declarations, and a long trail of promotional expenses labeled as wellness outreach. In reality, they were yoga retreats, influencer partnerships, and luxury rental properties. I leaned back in the chair, hands resting on the keyboard. So this was the better she left for. A man who made his living selling the illusion of health while standing on a financial cliff. Built in part with my money. Or at least what he thought was mine. I didn't feel angry anymore, just sharp, focused, clear. For the first time in months, I knew exactly what I needed to do. Let them keep playing house in their fantasy. I had already started rebuilding my reality, one move ahead. Monday morning arrived like any other. I shaved, got dressed, and walked into my downtown Seattle office as if nothing had happened. The world didn't stop spinning just because your life imploded. It simply expected you to keep pace. Valerie, my assistant of 8 years, looked up from her desk, startled. "Ethan, I didn't think we'd see you today." I gave her a small nod. "I prefer momentum over shock." She hesitated. "Marissa called 3 times. Said there's been some misunderstanding about the accounts." She sounded urgent. "Tell her to contact my attorney," I said, without emotion, "and keep a record of any future calls." By noon, it escalated. The receptionist buzzed my office, her voice low. "Your wife's here. She won't leave." I took a breath, stood up, and walked out to the lobby. Marissa was waiting. Designer sunglasses pushed up like a crown. Yoga leggings paired with a cashmere hoodie, casual perfection. When she saw me, she smiled like she used to before asking for something big. "Ethan," she called out brightly, loud enough for others to hear. "There's been a huge mistake with the bank. All our accounts are frozen." "Not a mistake," I said evenly. "You made an unauthorized transfer. The bank flagged it as fraud." Her smile faltered. "It was a joint account. I'm your wife." "No," I corrected. "You're my soon-to-be ex-wife, who emptied our savings and sent a breakup text while posing on red rocks in Arizona." She dropped her voice. "You can't do this. I've made commitments. Jared and I put down deposits." I cut her off. "I know all about those commitments." She blinked. "You've been investigating me?" "No," I replied. "I've been protecting myself." Her expression shattered for a moment, just long enough for me to see panic beneath the poise. "I'll fight this," she hissed, low and sharp. "You can't cut me out. I'm entitled to half of everything." I didn't flinch. "Half of what you know about? Sure. But that's not everything." She blinked, confused. "What are you talking about?" "You'll find out," I said. "During discovery." I turned and walked back to my office without looking back. I heard her steps behind me stop. The silence was louder than any outburst she could have thrown. That afternoon, an email from her newly hired attorney landed in my inbox. Formal, aggressive, and riddled with hollow threats. He demanded immediate access to my full financial history and warned that any refusal would be seen as obstruction. He added that they were prepared to expose accounting irregularities if I didn't cooperate. It was amateur intimidation, the kind that relies more on noise than substance. I forwarded the message to my attorney with a single line: "Proceed as planned." By evening, my phone was buzzing again, but this time with texts from mutual friends. "Hey, just checking in. Are you okay? Why are you freezing her out like this? She says you're being vindictive. Is that true?" No one asked where she had been for the past week. No one questioned the six-figure withdrawal. No one mentioned the man she left me for. I didn't respond. Instead, I drove to the community gym I'd been going to for years. No designer machines, no influencer lighting, just iron, rubber, and quiet. I lifted until my arms trembled. Then I went back to the hotel. The trap was closing, but not around me. 3 days later, my attorney called. Her voice was steady, but I could hear the edge of satisfaction in her tone. "We found something," she said, "and it's significant." Marissa hadn't just taken one lump sum. Over the past year, she'd been siphoning funds from our joint account. Small withdrawals masked as wellness expenses, retreat payments, business costs. But the bulk of it? Transferred discreetly into a business account registered under Stonecore Wellness LLC, Jared's Gym. Almost $80,000, my attorney confirmed, all tied to your shared assets. The number didn't surprise me, but the confirmation hit harder than I expected. This wasn't impulsive. She had been planning it, layer by layer, transaction by transaction, while smiling across dinner and talking about future vacations. "She's been funding him," I said quietly. "With your money," my attorney replied. "We're updating the divorce filing to include financial infidelity. And since she used marital funds to back another business, we can file for restitution as well." I thanked her and ended the call. I sat alone for a while, the Seattle rain ticking softly against the hotel window. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad anymore. She didn't just fall for someone else. She built a runway for escape and fueled it with every quiet act of betrayal she thought I wouldn't notice. That night, a new text lit up my screen. Unknown number. You need to back off. Marissa deserves better. Don't make this uglier than it has to be. Jared. I didn't reply. Instead, I reached for my phone and typed a name into my contacts. Noah. We're going deeper, I said when he picked up. I want everything you can find on Stonecore. Bank records, loans, co-signers, the works. There was a pause. Legal channels only, right? Of course, I said. But my voice had never sounded colder. Noah didn't waste time. By the time I got to his place, his screens were already lit up with loan agreements, credit reports, and internal filings linked to Stonecore Wellness. A digital autopsy in progress. You might want to sit down, he said. The data painted a clearer picture than any confession could. Jared's gym was a shell, polished branding hiding a collapsing core. Every expansion was fueled by loans he had no means to repay. New weight machines, paid influencers, studio renovations. It was all a bet placed on perception, not profit. And then came the document that made my jaw tighten. Here, Noah said, pulling it up. Loan application, January 12th. Equipment financing, $175,000. Jared signed. And so did Marissa. I leaned in. Her signature sat in smooth cursive on the bottom line. The loan had been approved based on joint marital assets. She signed while we were still legally married, I said flatly. She listed herself as co-owner. Claimed your income as part of the financial backing, Noah confirmed. It helped them get better terms. She leveraged my name. For him. And that's not all, he added, opening a second tab. Credit cards. A luxury lease in her name, but with your income listed as a guarantee. Even the new location for his studio? She signed that contract using marital status for negotiation. I stared at the screen. She hadn't just betrayed me emotionally. She tied my name to a sinking ship and smiled while doing it. She has no idea what she triggered, I said quietly. Noah looked over. And neither does Jared. I nodded. That's about to change. The next morning, I sat across from my attorney in her office, overlooking the Sound. A gray drizzle streaked down the windows, but inside, everything was sharply defined. I slid a folder across her desk, every document Noah and I had compiled. The loan agreements, the co-signed leases, the business credit cards tied to my financial profile. She didn't just steal from me, I said. She gambled with my signature. My attorney flipped through the paperwork, nodding slowly. This is more than enough. We'll file for emergency asset protection today. The loan fraud alone is grounds for immediate action. By afternoon, the paperwork was signed and filed. Then I drove across town to Stonecore Wellness. The gym looked exactly as I expected. Sleek, modern, lined with affirmation quotes and polished concrete floors. Jared stood at the front, talking to a woman in a branded crop top, his smile perfectly rehearsed. He spotted me the second I walked in. That same smile faltered, just a hair. Still, he walked over like nothing was wrong. You must be Ethan, he said, extending a hand. I didn't take it. We need to talk, privately. He led me to a glass-walled office at the back. Once inside, I closed the door behind us and placed the folder on his desk. He opened it, read the first page, then the second. His face drained. I don't understand, he said. It's simple, I replied. Every loan you took with Marissa was backed using marital assets, without my consent. That's loan fraud. I didn't know. You didn't care to know, I interrupted. and now the banks will care for you." He stared at me, stunned. "I'm not here for vengeance," I added. "I'm here to inform you. The guarantees are void, and the clock is ticking." Then I left, without waiting for a response. A week later, I drove north toward the Idaho border, following the winding roads that led to my father's old cabin, a quiet place tucked deep in the pine-covered hills. I hadn't been back since the funeral. The air felt different out here. Clean, cold, honest. I unlocked the front door, stepped into the silence, and let it hold me. The furniture still smelled faintly of cedar and dust. On the mantel, my father's fishing rod leaned against the stone fireplace, just where I'd left it 2 years ago. I lit a fire and sat in the chair he used to read in, the one with the torn leather armrest. In the drawer beside it, I found a stack of letters he'd written to me before he passed. Advice, memories, warnings I hadn't been ready to hear. "Don't let your kindness become currency," one letter read. "The people who truly love you won't ask you to bankrupt yourself to prove it." That line broke something in me and rebuilt something else. I stayed for 3 days, chopped wood, cooked simple meals, slept without noise, no spreadsheets, no filings, no messages from attorneys, just stillness. If this story speaks to you, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, or leave a comment below. There's more to come. On the last morning, I stood on the porch with a mug of coffee, watching the mist lift off the trees. And for the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about her.